This is the story of Elisa Izquierdo, a name many have forgotten, but whose death exposed a chilling truth about the systems designed to protect our children. It's a story that proves the system doesn't just break. In Elisa's case, it was never truly built to protect her in the first place. On November 22nd, 1995, a 6-year-old girl lies on a urine-soaked mattress, her brain hemorrhaging from a skull that has been fractured. For 2 full days, she hasn't walked or spoken, yet nobody comes to save her. Her teachers had seen the bruises. Her neighbors had heard the nightly screams. Child Protective Services had a file with her name, her address, and a history of warnings. Every supposed safety net was in place, and every single one failed. Today, we're not just telling a story. We're examining a catastrophic betrayal and asking the ugliest question of all. What happens when every single person in a position of power simply looks away? Elisa Izquierdo's first few years felt like a small miracle. Born in February 1989, she entered the world with cocaine in her system, the consequence of her mother, Awilda Lopez's, addiction. Her father, Gustavo Izquierdo, a Cuban immigrant working at a Brooklyn shelter, was granted full custody. With no idea how to be a father, Gustavo taught himself everything. He learned to change her diapers, to do her hair, and rocked his princess to sleep with Cuban lullabies humming from old speakers. He enrolled her in the Prospect Park YMCA Montessori school, where the staff remembered her as radiant. One teacher recalled, "You couldn't resist that smile." Elisa always clung to people. She had so much love. In 1993, the school introduced her to a patron, Prince Michael of Greece, a devoted supporter of Montessori education. The moment they met, Elisa leaped into his arms. Charmed by the bright, loving girl, he made an extraordinary offer. He would pay her private school tuition all the way through the 12th grade. It felt like a fairy tale. Elisa, with a Wonder Woman backpack that was often bigger than she was, seemed destined for a future far from her difficult start. But Gustavo had a simpler dream, to take his daughter to Cuba. He bought the plane tickets and was ready to go, but he would never get the chance. On May 26, 1994, the very day they were scheduled to fly, he died of cancer. In an instant, the only world Elisa had ever known and the only parent who had ever protected her was gone. Within weeks of Gustavo's death, his greatest fear became a reality. A New York family court judge, Phoebe Greenbaum, granted temporary custody of Elisa to her biological mother, Awilda Lopez. The court was assured that Awilda had completed rehab, found housing, and was now a fit parent. Elisa's Montessori teachers and Prince Michael wrote desperate letters to the court, detailing the bruises and emotional trauma they had witnessed after Elisa's weekend visits with her mother. They begged the judge to award custody to Elisa's aunt instead. Their pleas were dismissed as speculative. In September 1994, the judge made the order permanent with a single hollow line of defense: mother to accept supervision from the Child Welfare Administration. It was ink pretending to be armor. Years later, a devastated Prince Michael told reporters he should have thrown bombs in the CWA's doorway, adding, "At least we will say our mea culpa. We're not going to run behind confidentiality laws and not admit we've made a mistake." On Elisa's last day at the Montessori school, she reportedly wrapped herself around a teacher's leg and sobbed, refusing to let go. The staff could only watch as the car pulled away, taking her from the last safe place she would ever know. The abuse reports they had already filed were stamped closed. What followed was a 16-month masterclass in systemic indifference. The warning signs weren't just red flags. They were blinding neon lights, and every single one was ignored. In September 1994, now at a public school, a teacher noticed fresh bruises on Elisa's arms and filed a report with Child Services. An intake worker coded the case as low risk, later stating the concerns were not legally reportable without more direct evidence. That October, a neighbor, Gloria Quinones, heard horrific screaming from the apartment and called 911, not once, but twice. Both times, police officers spoke to Awilda through a chained door and left without ever laying eyes on the child inside. If you've made it this far, I want to ask you a small favor. If you're not already a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. And if Elisa's story is breaking your heart the way it did mine, go ahead and tap the like button. It's not just support for the channel. It tells the algorithm this story matters, and it helps keep her memory alive. In March 1995, an anonymous letter arrived at the Child Welfare Agency, stating that Awilda was locking Elisa in a dark room for hours on end. Just days later, Elisa was admitted to a hospital with a fractured shoulder, an injury that had gone untreated for 3 days. Throughout this period, Prince Michael continued to fight for her. He wrote letters on behalf of Elisa's cousin, who was seeking custody, and even raced to the welfare agency himself. But he was stopped by security in the lobby and never allowed upstairs. The pattern was always the same. A report was filed, a form was filled out, and the case would vanish into a backlog, met with resounding silence. Elisa's seat at the Montessori school remained empty. Her new school records showed dozens of unexplained absences, until eventually she stopped showing up at all. According to police reports, Awilda's treatment of Elisa was both physically and psychologically torturous. Investigators later learned she had inflicted repeated harm on her daughter in increasingly disturbing ways. Awilda believed Elisa was possessed and claimed that violent punishment was the only solution. On November 15th, Awilda's boyfriend was jailed on a parole violation, leaving her alone with the children. On November 20th, in a final, horrific act of violence, Awilda slammed Elisa's head against a concrete wall. After that moment, the little girl never walked or talked again. 2 days later, on the evening of November 22nd, Awilda found her daughter unconscious, with brain fluid leaking from her nose and mouth. She didn't call 911. She called her sister, Mercy, and told her Elisa was like retarded on the bed, not eating or drinking or going to the bathroom. Mercy screamed at her to take the child to the hospital. Awilda's chilling reply was that she would think about it after she finished the dishes. Hours later, Awilda finally asked a neighbor to check on Elisa. Seeing the lifeless little body, the neighbor dialed 911. It was too late. Paramedics pronounced Elisa dead at the scene. The medical examiner's report was a catalog of horrors: broken fingers, a massive brain hemorrhage, and evidence of repeated sexual trauma. Lieutenant Luis Gonzalez, a veteran of 22 years on the force, stepped out of the autopsy room and told reporters, "In my 22 years, this is the worst case of child abuse I have ever seen." In the face of overwhelming evidence, Awilda Lopez pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. She becomes eligible for parole every 2 years, and each hearing forces a wave of public outrage as people fight to keep her behind bars. In the months following Elisa's death, New York passed Elisa's Law, legislation designed to increase transparency in child welfare agencies and improve communication. On paper, it looked like a solution. In practice, critics argue that agencies still find ways to hide their mistakes, and that chronic budget cuts continue to undermine the system's ability to protect children. The question remains, if the same calls were made today, would the ending be any different? 18 years after Elisa's death, A boy in Los Angeles named Gabriel Fernandez was tortured and murdered, despite more than a dozen open investigations into his abuse. The names change, but the story often remains the same. Prince Michael of Greece never had children of his own. After Elisa's funeral, he and his wife, Marina, founded the Elisa Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. Every year, on November 22nd, they light a candle for the little girl who once leaped into his arms in a school hallway. Closer to home, a mosaic bench sits outside a public school built by parents, teachers, and children in her memory. And at Cypress Hills Cemetery, her gravestone bears an inscription that reads, "World, please watch over the children." On windy days, broken bracelets and small toys left by strangers still sparkle among the stones. Elisa dreamed of flying with her Wonder Woman backpack. The adults who were supposed to catch her let her fall, but maybe the rest of us still have a chance to catch the next child before it's too late. If this story has stayed with you, please like this video and share it with someone who still thinks someone else is handling it. The hard truth is, there is no someone else. And in the comments below, let us know one thing we can all do to be more vigilant in our own communities. Because until all of us are watching, none of our children are truly safe. Let's remember Elisa Izquierdo, not just as a tragedy, but as a promise to do better. Awilda Lopez, the woman who brutally ended Elisa Izquierdo's life, was released from prison on April 19th, 2022, after serving just 25 years. Despite being denied parole earlier that same year, she now walks free. Today, Awilda is out in the world, enjoying her freedom, while Elisa, the bright little girl who once dreamed of being Wonder Woman, never got to live past 6. Her life was stolen by the very person who was supposed to protect her. In my opinion, that isn't justice. Awilda Lopez should have received a life sentence, or even the death penalty. Because how do you repay a crime like that? How can a system that already failed Elisa while she was alive fail her all over again after death?